This roll of film, Kodak Gold 200, is what Kodak considers their budget film. Although I'm not sure whether their understanding of budget is the same as ours within the film community, but nevertheless, film photographers, including I myself, like to use this in a more casual manner than, for example, portrait, which I wouldn't want to shoot if I'm not diligently composing every shot. But this, I like to sometimes just put into my Olympus XA3, which I then bring along with me through everyday life, and I shoot this roll across a time span of maybe a month or two. And that is exactly what today's story is about. These negatives are photographs that I began shooting in August, and I only finished a couple weeks ago in September, and the other day I scanned these. And I have to say, this might be my favourite roll of Kodak Gold I've ever shot. So I've got quite a lot of photos that I want to show you today, and I've split them up in little sets, or you could say mini-series, which tell a story in their own because it's about one day or one evening. And I want to start off with this set of 4 images that I now have titled Romantic Wood Fetching, which already indicates the story behind these shots. So this was sometime in August when I was helping out some friends on their music video shoot, and we were in a quite remote place in Austria, and our plan was to make a big fire for this music video, and we had to get some wood for that. And I was in the 3 people team that had to get up at I think 4:30 in the morning and drive off at 5 to meet this guy at 6 who is going to sell us his wood. We were so fortunate that morning to have some good weather and a little bit of morning mist, so that drive to the forest where we bought the wood was just beautiful, and I couldn't resist to get some shots. And these are those photos that I got during that sunrise that I shot out of the car just while driving. So the compositions are a bit sloppy at times, but overall I think these photos just came out amazing. So this first shot I just love for the morning mood it conveys. It's such a wonderfully imperfect photograph that it evokes a sense of intimacy and a sense of the past. I often don't like it when the bottom of a photograph just seems to fade away, but here I think it's quite fitting. The second shot I love for its simple yet very effective composition, which, mind you, was not easy and involved some luck, because as you've probably experienced yourself, it is hard to precisely compose when sitting in a moving vehicle. So here I got lucky, and the shed is positioned in the middle, giving the photograph a point of interest and focus. This subject, however, is additionally surrounded by this gorgeous landscape that we can look far into thanks to the downward slope. And a small detail that I always appreciate when shooting out of a driving car is the vitality of the photograph created by the blurry foreground just whooshing by. Then, a bit later, when the morning mist was rising and glowing up in the sunlight, I couldn't resist to get a couple shots. This one is wonderful in its own unique way. The point about the photograph's vitality I spoke about really shines here, because a coincidental yet fine addition to this picture is the strange uneven angle I shot at. This was due to the moving car, I believe, but I'm lucky to see that this turned out in my favour, at least in my opinion. I think the fact that the photo is not straight adds more speed and adventurousness to the feeling. And then the last photo of this set is this one, which I think is amazing. It's similar to the previous one, but with a more proper composition, I'd say. I spotted this shot with the house on the field and the tree on the left, which work well as subjects in the overall scene. The wonderful aspect of this scene is that the lighting was phenomenal, as you can see. Sunrise light plus morning mist just doesn't get old. Anyway, I think I've talked enough about this first set. Let's move on to the second one. So the second set of photos, or mini-series, I titled For the Love of Chairs, and that is because, well, you can pretty obviously see every photo has a chair, and that is partly because of the music video, actually, because the music video was about chairs. Don't ask why, I didn't write the script, but it all makes sense, I think. I haven't seen the video yet, but I think it'll all make sense. But anyway, I really wanted to make use of this sort of random object, because a chair in these sort of random environments It always has a vibe. All except for one shot here was shot after we finished shooting our music video. So the bright sunny photo was during the music video, whereas all the other photos were shot after the music video, just after the sun had set, or maybe the sun was setting right at this moment. Anyway, the light was beautiful and I just had to make use of this moment. So, the first photo of this set is this lone brown chair in the grass. I like how the grass is a bit tall, at least tall enough to make the chair seem like it's hiding a little. I think overall it's a decent photograph, but the background could be a bit less distracting. However, I remember that this was the best angle I could find because the surrounding didn't get much better. Then the second photograph is wonderful in my opinion. The light from this time of day is much more pleasing I find, and the exposure worked out very nicely. I had asked Joseph to simply sit in this white chair in the grass because I thought it'd make for an interesting subject, and I think it really did. The environment he's sitting in just doesn't look quite right. The grass is too tall and he looks a bit out of place, in a good way, or should I say a convenient way, because that is what intrigues me in this photograph. Also, the background is much less distracting this time, so overall this result is great, I think. Then, the third photo is a continuation of this series with the white chair. Here I got basically the same shot as the one before, but better in my opinion. The light is better looking. The chair feels even more out of place than in the first one, thanks to the unnatural look of the white plastic, which heavily contrasts the completely natural surrounding. And the background is less distracting. I love this shot for the contrast between the chair and the environment. The next photograph is this portrait of Joseph with the chair, and I love it. It's a further continuation of these photos that evoke a feeling of discrepancy due to what could simply be called randomness. The chair is a simple yet kind of random element that makes its way into these photos, and I think this portrait is a wonderful addition to the collection. The fifth photo continues this concept and shows a wide shot of the landscape with Joseph running through the frame holding up the chair. It's this almost disruptive nature of the chair in the otherwise so simple photograph that gets me. The last photo is very similar but exposed for the sky. Beyond that though, I love how the composition and framing worked out here and how the cluster of trees in the middle create a dark frame around Joseph and the chair, which are still quite visible thanks to their white colour. So, the third set is called The Berlin Underground is Green, and I think that is for pretty obvious reasons as you can see, and I think the title actually says everything already. These three photos were in the underground of Berlin. They're pretty green, thanks to Kodak Gold's interpretation of the artificial light down there, and I think they came out really cool and work nicely as this set of three photos. I wanted to show them like this. Millie and I visited Berlin a couple weeks ago because I had something to do there, and also we just added a couple days to do some sightseeing there, and that is the context in which these photos were shot. Here's the first photograph from this three photo set. The reason I got this and what caught me here in this moment was the emptiness of this corner. A typical liminal space situation I found here, and it really struck me by surprise because, I mean, come on, this is Berlin and the station we were at is certainly not a random unknown one. Therefore, I was confused to see this corner so empty, which led me to get a shot. The result is alright, I think, a bit shaky, but not much of an issue I find. Also, I actually love the green colour shift Kodak Gold has given the artificial light here. The only thing I'm a little dissatisfied with is the composition. I guess I wrongly estimated the size of frame and hence got too close. Now looking at the shot, I wish I were 2 or 3 steps further behind, which I think would have given the shot more breathing room, which would have enhanced that feeling of emptiness. The second shot I got is this portrait of Melly at the same station. This was made in the same way that 90% of the few portraits I shoot are made, so that means I set the camera ready to shoot and then just get a portrait by surprise to get a more or less candid moment, hence the shake in this portrait, which I don't mind though, it suits the look I find. Again, this green tint that is going on here I find pretty cool, and I think the portrait is not too bad. Lastly, I want to end this set with this photograph of this particular station that just looks so cool, as if it were straight out of Star Wars. Star Wars often has these long geometrical alleys or paths in city areas or big imperial bases and places like that, which often feature the same kind of repetitive lighting like here. Combine that with a dark green look and you get this, which I think really looks cool, except that I forgot to set the focus to long distance. Then the next set of photos is called Bits of Summer in Between, and that is because this summer I was quite busy actually. Melly and I were trying to, find a place to move to. As you can see, I'm not in Salzburg anymore, and we often drove to Innsbruck because we had to check out an apartment there. And some of these photos were in between that time of driving between Innsbruck and Salzburg. That is why I called this series Bits of Summer in Between, because it's not that we went to that lake specifically just to visit that lake. It was actually just that we were driving home and we saw, oh, there's a lake on the way, why don't we stop by there and check it out? And that is what we were doing here. 2 of these photos I think were actually in an evening where we specifically wanted to go to a lake, and we did that. But still, these photos don't feel like days of summer when I spent the whole day at a lake or something. It was these moments in between the days or the weeks when we found a slot where we could just go to a lake maybe, and we checked it out. So it's a collection of summer photos in between the busy moments of life of summer 2022. Alright, so the first photograph from this little series is this pretty basic and traditional wide-angle landscape, which I think is decent. Nothing special at all, but still totally worth some appreciation, especially for the wonderful colours Kodak Gold is blessing us with. The film captured the rich blue colour of the lake very nicely, I find, and I mean, we just have to appreciate these impressive mountains behind the lake. Also, I like that the sky has some clouds, instead of simply being blue. The clouds add some interest to the sky, which without them would have probably just ended up as negative space of the lesser good kind. The next shot is this simple portrait of Melly with the lake in the background, and I think it's fairly obvious that I was fond of the framing with the trees here, which worked out wonderfully. The photo isn't special, I think, it just fits into the series so nicely and ends up making the set a better one in total. Here's another angle of the lake. I think I prefer the first one though, but here too, I kept this in the set because I think it is the sequence of photos that makes this set feel complete. Next is this detail shot of the water around the rocks here, which I think came out great. I love the glowing light coming from the top left corner and how the lighting allowed me to capture this detail in such a clear and also pleasing way. And then the last shot of the set is this photograph of Melly walking along a narrow path through some bushes, and I love this one. The camera exposed this so nicely, I find, so that the shadows and colours have a good punch, yet we don't get too dark, which could result in a loss of the summer feeling. Also, the colour contrast between Melly's clothes and the deep greens of the bushes just matches so nicely. Something else I love about this photograph is the motion blur in the bushes. I took this while walking at the same pace as Melly to hopefully get a decently sharp photo of her with the bushes whooshing by on the sides, and it worked out quite alright. Melly also ended up a bit blurry, but not in an unpleasant way. And now, lastly, here are 3, I would say, honorary mentions. These photos, I have to say, these 3 aren't really connected in a proper way like the previous ones, but I still wanted to show them because I really like the photos. So I just called it Snippets of Life, a very, basic title for photos that don't really have a connection. They're just parts of my life in the last 2 months, and I just wanted to include them here because I like them a lot, and that is this set. So here's the first of the last 3 photos. This one, I remember I saw the potential while riding the escalator up from the underground station. However, someone walked into my frame, so I didn't get the shot. At the top, I simply took the escalators you can see in the back down again just to do it again. And so on this second ride, I got this shot. I didn't shoot that much in Berlin because the lighting was often not in my favour, but in this moment I kind of liked the look of it. I actually try to avoid frontal light and lighting that is close to being frontal, except when shooting with flash of course. But here I think it was the colours that were telling me to get the shot anyway because it'll look good, and I think it really does. The bottom is pretty neutral, whereas the building has this warm orange tint that beautifully contrasts the blue sky, resulting in this overall balanced photograph that I found surprisingly aesthetically pleasing. Then the second shot here was shot at sunrise, as you can probably tell by the completely burnt out sky in the back. Despite that though, I think the lighting is so beautiful. The way it gives the three people from the crew a glow from behind is amazing. The main reason I love this photo though is the subjects themselves, because they are all in such different positions and states of mind that make them all the more individual, which I think adds to the interest of the photo. So Ellen on the left is the only one acknowledging my presence as the photographer. I don't quite know what Oscar on the right was doing. Maybe he did notice me but was trying to strike a funny pose, which certainly worked in my opinion, but I don't remember whether he was staged or candid. And then Lena in the middle was just concentrating on her work and looking for her frame, I guess. Then the last photo of today's video is nothing grandiose to finish the video with greatness. Instead, it's a pretty average photograph of a museum in Berlin, but I like it, so I wanted to include it. I like it for the framing and the golden light that gives the shot its romantic and somewhat nostalgic feeling. So that's it. Those were my favorite photos from this roll of Kodak Gold that I shot in the last 2 months, and as said, I think this is one of my favorite rolls of Kodak Gold I've ever shot. There were just so many photos that I really like on just one roll of film, which I rarely have. I often have like half of the photos maybe that I really like, and the other half is quite random, but in this case, there were so many shots that I think really came out nicely, and so I thought it's worth making a whole video just about this roll, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments. I'd be very curious to read what you have to say. And yeah, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, I'd appreciate it, and consider subscribing if you haven't yet. I'll see you again next week in the next video. Until then, goodbye.